Today's video is going to discuss the topic of trail wrist motion, particularly through impact, and how mastering the trail wrist, getting that correct, can really help you to master ball striking and club face control, which will ultimately help you play better golf. So this particular topic is one very dear to my heart. It's an area of the swing that I've consistently struggled with and I still work on to this day. Understanding how this trail wrist moves, not just throughout the backswing and the downswing, but particularly through impact, can really make or break your ball striking capability and your ability to control the direction of your shots. And I know that's certainly an area I struggle with. Let's talk about the facts really, first of all. First thing to understand is that because we're wearing this on our trail wrist, the extension flexion movements, the anatomical movements are the same that you might be familiar with the lead wrist, but we're looking for the sort of opposite numbers. So where extension is bad in the lead wrist, extension is actually preferred and desirable in the trail wrist. So flexion numbers are better, extension numbers are better than flexion numbers. Let's make that point to begin with. And if I was to take my setup, looking at the HackMotion app there, the live avatar with my trail wrist, I start out with around 12 degrees of extension in this trail wrist. So there's a little bit of bend there. And I would tell you that desirable number, a desirable impact number, would be to have more trail wrist extension. You see that number's gone up to 28 there. To have more trail wrist extension at impact than you had at setup. Now I will also tell you that that's much easier said than done. And I've practiced like this for a while, thinking about how to work on my trail wrist and keep that bend in place for long enough. Because most of the time, and most ordinarily for you, you'll find that this extension, this bend, this backward bend in the trail wrist is oftentimes lost prematurely, lost too early, lost before impact, causing contact issues. You'll hit fat shots and thin shots. You'll also be losing and leaking a lot of distance if you do that. Plus, you'll lose the club face, so you won't be able to control the direction of your shots. This really is a key element of the swing. Why is it so difficult to maintain this trail wrist extension? Well, the reason is because we're swinging this golf club around us, and as the club gets longer, we're swinging it faster. The weight of that club, the force effectively that's being applied to our hands and our wrists during the swing, becomes so great that this club and the weight of it wants to get thrown out, line up with our lead arm and just overtake. That's what it wants to do. That's the simple explanation of why this is so difficult. So in order for you to be able to retain this, you need to first of all know that you're supposed to, and then be quite intentful in your manners about how you practice this. So I'm going to say something here that I think is important. I may have to repeat it a few times. Although we are trying to attain more trail wrist extension at impact than we had at setup, that does not mean that I am holding on to this trail wrist extension forever and even increasing it through impact. That would not be how the best golfers do it. The best golfers have the shaft more forward at impact than they had it at setup with all clubs. They have more trail wrist extension at impact than they had at setup with all clubs. But at the point of impact, that trail wrist is definitely going towards flexion. This club is being thrown. So really what they're learning to do, and this is the key part to understanding this, they're learning to manage the forces of the swing and delay the release of that club to the appropriate point. Now for every single one of you watching this video, your individual sensation to achieve that appropriate amount will very much be different. However, given the thousands of golf lessons I've taught over the years, I will share with you the tips and tricks and the feels that most golfers need in order to improve this skill. Quick question for you. Did you know that 80% of your golf ball's direction comes from the club face angle at impact? And it's your wrists that control that angle. If you want to hit straighter shots and add more distance to your game, then check out the link in the description below. So a good way for you to understand and even start to recognize the effect that this force of the swing has on your ability to maintain or sustain these wrist angles, this trail wrist in particular, would just be to set up. Go ahead and set yourself up to a shot. I've got that avatar running here. I'm going to just hit a small chip shot. I've got a 7-iron here, but I'm going to pretend I'm just hitting like a long chip and run and see if I can deliver more trail wrist extension, so more shaft lean, with a small swing. So I'm just going to go back and hit that shot, chipping it down the fairway. Not particularly long shot. What do I get there? I got 30 degrees of trail wrist extension at impact, and I had 12 degrees of trail wrist extension at setup. So I increased the extension between setup and impact by about 18 degrees. That's pretty decent. That's relatively easy to do based on a couple of things. One, my knowledge that I'm supposed to do it, and I've been trying to do this for a very long time. And two, the fact that I'm moving this club at a small speed. So the force is not pulling this shaft and this club head away from me. As I begin to increase the speed of my swing, this will be more of a stock shot. Let me just hit one of those for you. So let's see what happens when I hit a normal 7-iron. Didn't hit it very well, it wasn't a great strike. You'll see there on my trail wrist data, now I went, and that's why it wasn't such a great shot, now I went from having 10 degrees of extension at setup, so a very similar amount of extension. But when I hit the ball there, I had 15 degrees of flexion. This thing's measuring like this, it's almost back, scooping, flipping. That's the problem that I perpetually struggle with and work on relentlessly and religiously to try and improve. And it's the ability to control this force through the swing that really determines how good of a golfer you can be, because until such time as you develop this skill, you'll have a very clear ceiling as to how good you can get based on your swing speed. So if you don't swing particularly fast, you might be able to manage this, but not swinging fast means you can't hit the ball very far, therefore you can't be a great golfer. And as you try to swing faster to increase your speed, you don't have the skill set or the understanding of how to manage this wrist, and therefore your contact starts to deteriorate, or your ability to control the direction of your shots deteriorates to such an extent that you're just not able to control your golf ball. So understand that as you start to swing faster, even if you try to keep the same amount of wrist bend, even if you try to deliver the same amount of shaft lean, you actually need to try to deliver more just to achieve the same amount as the speed increases. So I hope that message is coming through. Therefore, there's an extremely clear way that you need to practice. You must practice in a way that feels like you're exaggerating this trail wrist bend to the maximum, to the point where it feels like you're holding on to this angle in the trail wrist for as long as possible. The static measurement there at this point is 54 degrees of extension. So really feeling like the hands are leading and the trail wrist is bent backwards. Okay, that's the feel you're trying to go for. And I'm trying to try and maximize that. So that says 54, let me get that to where that was, 51 degrees, 50 degrees. I'm going to try and hit a shot now, not a full swing just yet, but I'm going to start increasing the speed, trying to hold on to that angle as much as I can. Now I felt like I did a pretty good job there. 11 degrees of extension at setup, 31 degrees of extension at impact. I'm happy with that. And I felt like a good shot, good contact, controlled the low point. That's a big part of this trail wrist work, the radius management. The extra shaft lean helps me to hit down, hit the ball first and the ground second. Solid contact at a club speed there of just 60 miles per hour. So 60 miles per hour is obviously not full swing yet, but I managed the contact, I managed the direction of the shot, a lovely little tight push draw. That's what I'm looking for. And that was me trying, as I mentioned there, to really hold on to these wrist angles for as long as possible. There are people out there that will tell you that you shouldn't do that this club should be thrown past your hands in order to increase speed. I'm not disagreeing that happens. That certainly does happen and should happen. The critical part of that discussion is when it happens. And in the vast majority, and I'm going to include 99% of golfers into this category, you're releasing the trail wrist too soon. It's only the very elite ball strikers that have any sort of problem with holding on to this stuff for too long. So as a very basic, broad piece of advice, you should be trying to hold these wrist angles past impact. So we did one there where my feel was 50 degrees of extension. And I tried to execute that with a medium length swing. Let me start increasing the speed and still trying to stop and maintain that feel in the trail wrist. So I definitely swung faster. Club head speed's gone up 13, nearly 14 miles per hour there. So that was a faster swing. I still managed to do a decent job of the trail wrist. 14 degrees of extension at setup, 25 at impact. So I'm still managing to just increase that slightly. But in doing so, I will promise you, and it's hard to convey this sometimes in the video, I am trying my damnedest here to keep this wrist bend in place. The second I stop thinking about this and just let this club go, you watch what we're going to get. I'll give you another one of these. That's more of a full shot. You see there how the trail wrist at impact was more flexed than at setup. So I'm again throwing that club head, and that's where I often get myself into trouble controlling the curve on my golf ball. So you're going to need to look at the data and work with what you have, but almost certainly you're going to need to feel like you have a lot more trail wrist bend, a lot more trail wrist extension at impact than at setup. Not just a little bit, a lot. And then the best drill to work with that is the progression of what I started to do. I call it the hit hard, stop quick drill, where you really try to stop as soon as you can after impact, maintaining the trail wrist bend and gradually building up the speed. So that was another example of a 60-mile-an-hour swing. Good contact, push draw, more extension at impact than at setup. So tick the boxes. Tick the box that we had more trail wrist bend, controlled the speed, controlled the curve. Now I need to try to swing faster, hit hard, stop quick, remember. This is called hit hard, stop quick for a reason. Hit hard, stop quick. That's faster, trying to maintain the trail wrist bend. It is effortful. I'm telling you this as I'm communicating this to you. Swing's gone up to 78 miles per hour. Carry's got up to 137, total distance 152, push draw, pretty good. Again, managing to maintain the extension. This is hard work. This is effortful. I'm trying. I'm not just getting this for free. And as I force myself to hold on to this trail wrist bend, it helps me to use my body in a different way. It forces me to use my body in a different way to absorb those forces that I was talking about. So for those of you that watch your swing and see your arms collapsing through the ball, you see your wrists collapsing through the ball, all you're really witnessing there is the energy and the force of that swing being absorbed by your arms and your wrists, because you're not giving yourself a chance to absorb it anywhere else, because your body is not moving functionally or efficiently. So by breaking and stopping the swing, holding onto this trail wrist bend, I'm engaging and immediately absorbing more of this force in the swing in other segments of my body. My body's absorbing it rather than my arms and my wrists. That's a pretty simple way to say it. So one more of these to see how fast we can go. Maximum trail wrist retention in my mind, trying to bend this thing back, swinging as fast as I can, stopping as quickly as I can. Nearly, it's getting faster. Okay, 81 miles per hour, that's not far off my full swing. 153 miles per hour, 153 yards of carry. 165 total, this is a 7-iron. I managed to increase the trail wrist extension there by about 9 degrees. And this is how I practice. And this is how I would tell you to practice. If you want to increase your ability to strike the ball consistently, swing faster, deliver more of that speed to the ball, and at the same time, control the face-to-path relationship, meaning the direction of your shots, you would do well to just practice hit hard, stop quick, and use the HackMotion to just tell you whether you need to be thinking about adding more of this, or you might be the 1% who's actually adding too much, and you would know that by having a look at the amount of trail wrist bend there is at impact and being able to take some of that out. So this would be the progression of the drill would be to build up the speed. As you build up the speed, increase your intentfulness of how much of this shaft lean to create via the trail wrist bend, and do more of it, and then measure using the device as to see whether you are being successful at that or not. Hit hard, stop quick, trail wrist bend. Again, pretty decent contact, 80 miles per hour, similar distance, similar type of shot, small push draw, which is typical for me. If you struggle with the trail wrist, knowing first of all that this is a hard part of the swing to manage might give you some form of comfort, but once you get beyond that and you start wanting to actually do something about this, knowing that you need to think about this piece very intentfully, it needs to be something that you are consciously trying to do, and in my experience you need to be thinking about it a lot more than you think you need to. You're looking at the picture through impact, seeing the shaft overtaking your lead arm, seeing this little bit of flipping, this little bit of scooping, and in your mind you're thinking, okay, I know I need to push my hands a little bit further forward, but the amount that you're trying to do it
is not sufficient to actually overcome those additional forces that you're dealing with in the swing. And then as the club gets longer, this was an example with a 7-iron, as the club gets longer, the swing gets faster, the forces increase, it becomes even more difficult to hold on to those angles, therefore you need to try even harder. So if you're starting out with this and you're at beginner level, just get your pitching wedge, short club, lots of loft, easier to maintain and manage these forces, and just do these small swings with the shortest possible follow through, adding in that trail wrist bend. And then as you progress, your goal is to begin to swing faster with that club to the point where you're basically reaching full speed, still able to sustain the trail wrist bend. And then the progression from there is to start going to longer clubs. Work through that progressively, systematically, measuring with HackMotion, making sure you're getting the results that you want, and you should see better contact immediately, better distance over time because you're able to deliver the correct amount of shaft lean that will help you to compress the ball properly. And then you'll also see better directional control of your shots because you're controlling not just the low point of your swing, you're controlling the face to path relationship, which is really a skill that's currently reserved for the best golfers out there. Hope you found this video useful. Trail wrist mechanics, super important. The intent needs to match what you need to do, and you only really know what you need to do if you're measuring what's going on at the wrist level. And the best way to do that is to do the HackMotion wrist sensor on your trail wrist. If you enjoyed today's video, you can click down on the link in this description, which will take you to further wrist training videos for HackMotion.